Hey, I'm Ted Santos. It's been a while since I've done a video of any kind. I haven't done a live stream and just kind of took a step back and reevaluating what I'm doing in the marketplace. So, want to thank you for checking my video. This is a good time for you to hit that like button because I am going to enlighten people about a topic that's probably, at least most people think it's common sense. And it's a topic that's probably taken for granted. And most of what people know about it is going to be pop culture, meaning they heard it in the movies, you heard it in the hallways of your job. And that topic is the difference between leadership and an alpha. Most people have a presupposition thinking that they are the same thing. And uh, most people haven't done the research. It's pop culture, as I said. And it's sort of analogous to the time when Europeans believed that the earth revolved, or that all the planets revolved around the earth. And a guy named Copernicus comes along and says, "Hey, that's inaccurate. All the planets go around the sun, including the Earth." And all the expert astronomers dismissed him, called him a liar. The church executed him for heresy. And here we are today, understanding that Copernicus was actually correct. 40 years after Copernicus was executed, Galileo was born. And he had to go through similar challenges, but they listened. So my intent is that you don't have to wait until I'm no longer around, because I'm going to sort of return to a lot of what my original videos YouTube channel was about, which was about business and leadership. And this topic between alpha and leadership is going to be very similar to a video I did when I said, what's the difference between management and leadership? The difference is I'm going to use some sources. And I'm going to use sources that have experts, not the experts of this astronomers of Copernicus's past, but these are people who literally work in the field of leadership. Uh, they are executive coaches. They've been leaders like myself. I've run a number of companies as a chief operating officer, and currently I am you could say an advisor to CEOs. I am an executive coach, and I work with CEOs of mid-sized to large companies and working with them to create disruptive strategies. So I am very much focused on leadership. I've worked with people who have never been a president, and I've trained and developed them so that they did get the job to become president. I've done all kinds of things focused on leadership, not just training and running other people's companies. I've run my own. So, but I will tell you that from the research I've done here, and I'm going to take a few sources and put them together so that you have a very rich and well-rounded understanding that about leadership and the alpha. And you know, like I said, this is one of these topics that can be used definitely for business, but it also can be transferred into a social life because there's so much talk about being the alpha dog, whether it's business or social, and most people believe alpha is synonymous with leadership. Are they though? Most of you are going to be surprised. Some of you are going to be disappointed. And then there are a number of you who will remain in denial. So, what I'd like to do is do a screen share so that we can uncover what's really being said about this topic. So here I'm going, you see, I'm looking at Harvard University. In Harvard Business Review, they have a title, Coaching the Alpha Male by Kate Ludman and Eddie Erlinson. And if you look at the article where it starts, and I'm not going to read this whole article, there are two parts that I want to focus on. Highly intelligent, confident, and successful alpha males represent about 70% of all senior executives. As the label implies, they're the people who aren't happy unless they're the top dogs, the ones calling the shots. Although there are plenty of successful female leaders with equally strong personalities, we found top women rarely, if ever, match the complete alpha profile. Um, so, just these first, they're the top dog calling the shots. And a lot of people are probably like, yeah, I knew it. I knew it. That's what I'm talking about. I'm an alpha. I'm going to say the research doesn't end with that. Uh, and for the record, they're getting this information from people in executive coaching firms who have worked with more than 1,000 executives. So these are not people who are just like a professor giving an intellectual discourse about what they think leadership is. If we go down further in this article to here, it says the more executive authority alphas achieve, the more pressure they feel, and the more pronounced their faults become. Alphas make perfect mid-level managers, where their primary role is to oversee process. But as they approach the CEO level, they're expected to become inspirational people. They're to become people managers. Unfortunately, most organizations aren't good at helping alphas make the required transition, which can be the greatest challenge of their careers. So, an alpha could be a mid-level manager. And I understand people say, well, managers have to be leaders and leaders have to be managers. But to go from being a manager in an organization and to make that leap to leadership in an organization, something has to happen. And that's what they're getting at here. And as you see, they say strengths of an alpha can eventually become weaknesses. And if you look here, when strengths become weaknesses in this exhibit, when an alpha, their attribute is self-confident and opinionated, value to the organization. Well, acts decisively, has good intuition. What the risk is they're closed-minded, domineering, and intimidating. And as a leader, if you have to be a people person who inspires people, that it actually ends up working against you. So it becomes very difficult to move up because really, ultimately, a manager is getting things done through others. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll drop the link for this article. But another one is your alpha is highly intelligent, right there. They see beyond the obvious and they take creative leaps. Well, the risk to the organization is they dismiss or demean their colleagues who disagree with them. So, these things that you could call self-confident, highly intelligent, action-oriented, high performing, like all of these things, if an alpha has it and they don't make that transition to leadership, those things end up working against them, and they can't figure out why. And they may come up with, well, people are intimidated by me and they can't handle me. No, that's not what leadership does. So I took another source. As I said, I'm putting pieces of the puzzle together. And this source is by a gentleman named Malcolm Gladwell. And he wrote several books, Tipping Point, Outliers, Blink. But this one, David and Goliath, is really interesting because in this book, he wrote about David and Goliath because David had a seemingly disadvantage against Goliath, being a much smaller opponent. And so one of the things he did is he interviewed Fortune 500 CEOs, and he found that a number of them were dyslexic. And dyslexia is something that could be a disadvantage. And Richard Branson is one of the CEOs who is dyslexic. And what Richard Branson and many other CEOs said was when they were young and in school, they figured out that they could not keep up with class because they read too slow. So what they did instead is they made best friends with the smartest person in math, smartest in science, geology, history, English, or whatever the topics they were, and they literally delegated homework to those people. They had those smart people do their homework, and they had them explain the topic so that they didn't have to read to catch up. They could just talk it through, and this person would explain it to them. What they didn't realize is they were literally developing leadership skills. And if you think about it, uh, these are the skills that you need as a leader. You need to be able to delegate to people. You have to have great listening skills, effective communication. You need to know how to inspire people to do things they wouldn't ordinarily do. And imagine those smart people were not sitting around waiting to do Richard Branson's homework. So he had to inspire them and create incentive plans. And there are many more things, negotiation, many more things. Malcolm Gladwell found that the dyslexic people learned skills that they were able to transfer to becoming great leaders. And at a young age, here they were developing leadership skills. They didn't know that that's what they were doing, except, yeah, that's what happened. So these are things that alphas don't do as well as a leader will do. Uh, let's see. Also in this book, in Gladwell's same book, he found that when a person lost a parent and you were around the age of 20, 21, that unfortunate and disadvantaged experience helped you develop leadership skills. It helped you work through adversity in a way that most people wouldn't imagine. Like, perhaps the military uh, can give you training to work in adversity, but losing a parent, that's pretty extreme. And especially at such a young age, to be around 20 years old. And personally, I know I lost both parents at 21. And I'm the oldest of four. My siblings were 19, 16, and 12. So I can tell you it creates a psychological disadvantage. But what it does, and what I saw when I was running companies that were in chaos, I could always fall back and say, wow, I've seen chaos worse than this when I lost my parents. So if I made it through that, I can make it through anything. But I also learned to work with people in the face of adversity. And how do you turn adversity into opportunities? These are all things that losing a parent does that helps you. And when it comes to leadership, you also learn about coaching people up. So, losing my parents, I needed my siblings to do things that you would never ask a 12 or 16-year-old to do, except I had to coach them up. So when I would found myself in an executive role, even just a manager, I was coaching people up. It was something that I just had inside of me, and it was part of me, and it was very much a part of something I developed in losing my parents. So if we think about this, when it comes to the alpha, they have to be number one at everything. And so for them, it's difficult for them to hire people who are smarter than them. So contrast that with the dyslexic who is accustomed to working with people smarter than them. The dyslexic knows they're not the smartest, so they know how to work with people smarter than them. And the alpha is actually competitive because they have to be number one. They may have such a competitive mindset that they could demoralize their people over time or criticize them, and criticize them in a way that the alpha believes he's the winner, he won. And so, how many people stick around for that kind of manager? There's another source I have. There's a woman by the name of Carol Dweck. And Carol Dweck is a psychologist, and she's created something where she looks at a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And people with a fixed mindset are very smart, and they're so smart that they're accustomed to having the right answers. And it, when they don't have the answer to something, they become uncomfortable and frustrated working in that uncertainty. And they often will give up. And she found this even for children. And that just didn't stop into adulthood. People with a growth mindset were more willing to work through problems longer and deal with the uncertainty of not knowing without quitting. So, uh, if you look at the difference between a growth and fixed, a fixed mindset, someone who's smart, could very easily be the alpha. And alphas tend to be more closed-minded, as we saw in the Harvard Business Review. From being smart, they tend to have a more of a fixed mindset. And leaders tend to have more of a growth mindset because they're looking at possibilities beyond what they know. And losing a parent puts you in uh, a really a real-time situation of dealing with things that are uncertain, because most of us are not prepared to lose a parent at around 20 years old. We still depend on our parents for guidance. So here we are, we've lost a support structure. So since alphas are most comfortable being the smartest in the room, they're less likely to delegate to their people. And that lack of delegation can actually stagnate the people around them. And I've seen that with really smart leaders who they grow their company, they grow it, and they're smart. They do everything, but they have a difficult time getting beyond that with their current leadership team. So they fire people and they hire new people who are much smarter than the ones they fired, and they grow again. But what happens is they don't delegate well. And if you don't delegate strategically, you end up not developing your people to do things. And then actually the company ends up outgrowing your people, and you have to fire them and hire smarter people. And then you get to the next level and you have to fire them. That becomes a problem with an alpha. They don't keep really good people, or they have to fire them because the company has outgrown them. And a lot of times the company outgrows the alpha, and the company will not grow beyond what the alpha is capable of doing. Another thing, if you think about, if you look at an alpha, how does an alpha wolf or lion get their position? They fight for it. They are the biggest and the strongest, and that allows them to defeat the existing alpha and fight off their challengers. So that's more of a defensive position. They believe their power comes from telling people what to do. I'm the guy with the answer. They believe being charismatic and all that other good stuff is the way to go. And just for when you talk about being charismatic, there's a guy by the name of Jim Collins. I don't have his book. Here's one of his other books, Jim Collins, uh, and he has a book called From Good to Great. It's a great read, and he talks about how companies that go from good to great didn't have charismatic leaders. Companies that consistently grew had leaders who were more humble. The charismatic leaders, those companies grew for a little while and then they dropped off, whether the leader left or the leader got stuck. Uh, so, Good to Great is a excellent book to read, and so is this one, Malcolm Gladwell. So, if we think about leaders who the alpha, who has to be the charismatic, smartest one in the room, and we contrast that with someone who actually is a leader. And if you look at leaders, even though they compete to get to where they are, they use intelligence. And leaders not only use intelligence, they have to accomplish something to climb that corporate ladder. And usually they're accomplishing things that most people don't. So they use intelligence, and ultimately they are achieving their success through other people. They produce results through other people. They're not doing it all on their own. They're delegating. They know how to get the best from people. They coach people up. That's how they climb the corporate ladder and end up in the C-suite, the chief operating officer, chief executive officer, chief intelligence officer, all of those. And what's more important is, as a leader, one of your big jobs is to create an environment that supports a high performing culture. So, as the Harvard article states, alphas make good mid-level managers. They are great at controlling what happens in time and space. Managers control, like they enforce, they impose that power. Leaders, on the other hand, well, they're responsible for creating new possibilities. In fact, they're responsible for disrupting what happens in time and space. And those new possibilities, they usually don't have a clear roadmap, which means you're dealing with tons of uncertainty. It's like a path of uncertainty. And instead of being frustrated and giving up, they have more of a growth mindset to be able to navigate their people through that uncertainty so that they come out on the other side with some possibility that didn't exist. And you could look at someone like Steve Jobs, who was really good at that. We're going to make some product that never existed, and while there's tons of uncertainty, having that growth mindset and being able to navigate your people through that, inspire your people, pull out the best from them, have them think about things in a way they've never done before. That's what leaders are all about. So, are you training to be an alpha, or are you training to be a leader? Love to hear your thoughts. Share this video, like it. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, this is a good time to do that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and your experiences. Which do you think you are, an alpha or a leader? Thanks for watching. Take care and goodbye.